Hello and welcome in to another episode of 1776 Podcast. Today what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you a video. So there's been a lot of talk, I'm in a lot of TikTok lives, those kind of things, and a lot of people, when Democrats come in there into our lives, it is, what are you going to do if this election gets, or if it doesn't go the way that you want it to? Are you going to accept it this time? The thing is that there's plenty of proof, and I think Leah Hoopes and Gregory Stenstrom, hopefully I said that right, Stenstrom, that's a tongue twister. Anyways, I think they did a pretty good job on their book, and I just want to show you that real quick. Just show you this page where we're going to be getting the video from. So you can see here, this is I think the parallelelection.com. But here is their book. I have not read it yet, but I am going to order one. However, the video here follows that pretty well. So we're going to dive into that. It's what this is all about today. I just wanted to put this out there. I'm sure it'll be shut down at some point. So it's here while it's here. Share it while you can. All right. Well, appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like, follow, share, comment, whatever else you're supposed to do. I don't know. So here we go. It's 28 minutes, 5 seconds long. If you've already watched this, you feel free to skip to the end. But it is very interesting. It's got a lot of video information in it, a lot of evidence. So if you were looking for evidence, here it is. All your friends that are Democrats. Why would I think you have friends that are Democrats? But anyways, if you do, and they want proof, show them this and tell them to dig a little deeper. So we can't put the deeper stuff on here because, old YouTube will flag it. But we can put this. Let's go.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
There are fears that what Giuliani is now pushing here in the United States could actually be part of Russia's latest and very massive disinformation campaign in the U.S. presidential election.
As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. They're sending millions of ballots all over the country. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
When the American people are able to take a close look at election time on their options, I think, Bill, we're going to win. Let me just tell you that. We're going to win.
America has been hijacked. For decades, shadowy government power brokers and oligarchs have been siphoning off our nation's wealth and undermining our republic. Operating with complete disregard for the will of the people and with no fear of retribution, they alone pick the winners and losers in politics, business, the economy, media, and education. In 2024 alone, they have tried to assassinate President Trump, not once but twice, start World War III, and they even pulled a palace coup on their party's nominee and sitting president. And now, Democrats and their media servants are sowing doubts about the upcoming election's outcome. Even if President Trump is ahead on election night on November 5th, key swing states will stop counting. Days, perhaps weeks later, Kamala Harris will be declared the new president-elect thanks to a record surge of late-counted mail-in ballots. In their book, The Parallel Election, A Blueprint for Deception, Leah Hoopes and Gregory Stenstrom expose the intricate mechanics of election fraud that are numerous and constantly evolving, noting that when one fraud system works, it's quickly replicated in other states.
Here, he was able to get an extra 17,000 votes over what Hillary Clinton had in the margin there.
On election night 2020, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, aka Delco, was the last county to report their vote totals. Delco sealed the win for Joe Biden in that state. The big con they pulled off was similar to the misdirection used by Paul Newman and Robert Redford, playing con men in the 1973 Hollywood classic, The Sting. The parallel election playbook isn't unique to Pennsylvania. It's run in all the swing states across the country, and they're looking to replicate its success in 2024. These are the 6 keys that are foundational to stealing an election. And it doesn't take all of them to win. Mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting.
I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Historically rife with fraud. Mass mail-in ballots requires no voter verification or chain of custody. Mail-in ballots lay in mailboxes and residences with low voter turnout, high tenant turnover, and wind up unclaimed and building mail rooms. They are then stolen and harvested by left-wing, get-out-the-vote organizations, filled out fraudulently, and stuffed into ballot drop boxes or dropped off at the Secretary of State's office en masse. Countries like France and the UK did away with mail-in ballots because they enabled fraud and citizens began to lose trust in their elections. Sound familiar? V-drives and tabulators. V-drives, or USB flash drives, transfer data from voting machines to central tabulation systems. Their firmware can be hacked to alter the way the voting machine functions, allowing someone to manipulate the vote count or even change the votes themselves if they have physical access to the voting machine. Tabulators are machines that count the votes. Connected to the internet, they can also be hacked to manipulate the vote count. Dirty voter rolls. Compromised voter rolls allow fraudsters to cast multiple votes using the names of the deceased or those who have moved away, while ballot harvesters submit fraudulent ballots for individuals no longer residing at listed addresses. They even include non-citizens and felons, enabling ineligible individuals to illegally vote. Blue Crest sorters. Blue Crest sorter machines process mail-in ballots. Some models are equipped with a ballot extraction module that opens the envelopes and removes the ballots. These sorters have Periscript software installed to automatically verify signatures, meaning they're connected to the internet. According to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, remote access is a threat for both insider and foreign interference. Decentralization. For 200 years, decentralized voting precincts, votes counted by your volunteer neighbor at the local level, provided a clear chain of custody and post-election verification. But now state centralized counting centers have removed the precinct oversight on the vote count and are being controlled by as few as 3 to 5 unelected partisan political operatives. The installation of Soros-funded and WEF-trained secretaries of state, attorneys general, county leaders, election directors, and in some cases, useful idiots to perpetuate the fraud, many of whom are in power in crucial swing states and are ready to help steal the vote in 2024.
The Democrats are trying to rig this election because it's the only way they're going to win.
There are 3,143 counties in the U.S. It only takes targeting 20 of those counties in crucial swing states to steal the election. This is the story of one of them. In 2016, Delaware County sent out 12,439 mail-in ballots. In 2019, Pennsylvania passed Act 77, a no-excuse mail-in ballot law that expanded mail-in voting. Exactly 1 year later, the number of mail-in ballots sent out in Delaware County for the election was 124,114. That's an increase of 898%. This is Greg Stenstrom, former naval officer, security expert, and founder of Patriot Online.
On November 3rd, 2020, Super Tuesday, I had to go to the Wharf building, and that's where they collected all of the mail-in ballots, and they centrally counted the election machine output. We got there, we had to wait for about 6 hours before they would let us in. I think we surprised them a little bit. First introduction to the way the election was being run. We saw basically chaos. We saw racks of mail-in ballots moving around over 3 different elevator banks, being moved into different rooms, handled by a large number of people with no chain of custody. Once I got up to the counting center and observed everything, as a fraud expert, what I look for is where they don't have cameras, and I look for what is trying to be hidden.
Leah Hoopes is a business owner and Republican committeewoman for Bethel Township in Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
In 2019, I became very involved with the Trump campaign after an influx of questionable grant money from the tech billionaire Mark Zuckerberg. I set out to recruit law enforcement and former military to be involved as poll watchers, bringing on individuals like Gregory Stenstrom. What they reported back was nothing less than staggering, blatant election fraud. During my open source investigations, I uncovered Blue Crest, a shady company running mail-in ballot sorters in our centralized counting centers. These machines, funded by Zuckerberg's dirty money, were being used to manipulate the vote.
Bluecrest sorters use artificial intelligence software from Periscript, whose AI algorithm is used to accept or reject ballots, often in highly contested states, to ease the workload of staff enforcing voter signature rules. Its founder is Evernote co-founder and long-standing Democrat donor Stepan Pachiko, and financially backed by rabid anti-Trumper and Democrat mega-donor Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. Hoffman wished death upon Trump, is a heavy donor to Josh Shapiro, and personally funded the E. Jean Carroll case against Trump.
One of my first observations with the Bluecrest mail sorters was they were accompanied by Pitney Bowes envelope openers that were slicing envelopes open. And then after they sliced those envelopes, they were bringing them into a back room that we had no visibility into for what they called adjudication. We learned later they were filling out new ballots for the ones they had sliced.
As we dug deeper, the connections became even more disturbing. Bluecrest is tied to Kevin Madden, a Democrat Delaware County councilman who was connected to Startup Health, and Dr. Howard Krein, who was Ashley Biden's husband. Ask yourself, why do so many powerful Democrat elites have connections to these election systems?
And what happens when ballots are damaged? They are adjudicated in back rooms where there was limited or no access, alongside complicit authorities.
This lady is marking the ballots. I filmed her a half hour ago doing 6, and she's still working at it. Let's stamp it, received, and let's fill in our 6 blanks. All at the top of the tickets on each one. And there's a security guard right there who's watching her. The cops are in on it. Disgusting.
Let's talk about what's really happened here in Pennsylvania.
This is Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania's current governor. Groomed for political glory early on by the Clinton machine, he's quickly risen through the ranks of Pennsylvania state leadership as a good progressive soldier. During 2020, as Attorney General, Shapiro defended then Governor Wolf's draconian and unpopular COVID lockdown orders, and he raised his profile on the back of rabid anti-Trumpism, battling election auditors, and repeatedly referring to anyone who thinks the 2020 election was stolen as a conspiracy theorist and promoter of the big lie.
There are no legitimate lingering questions from the 2020 election. And let's also speak some truth. There have been 2 audits done here in Pennsylvania by law. I heard the word transparency thrown around quite a bit a moment ago. You know what transparency would be? Not lying to your constituents and not denying the simple facts that we had a safe and secure and free and fair election here in Pennsylvania.
But it wasn't just a war of words for Shapiro. He dispatched special agents to threaten witnesses in Delaware County.
On November 17th, 2 special agents for the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office knocked on my door. They were there to investigate me for potential election fraud. I told them they must be mistaken because I was the one who had reported election fraud to the U.S. Attorney General. This was clear intimidation and a clear threat directly coming from Governor Josh Shapiro.
So where did Josh Shapiro end up after the 2020 election? Well, he's the sitting governor of Pennsylvania.
Weeks before the election, in anticipation of the mail-in ballot surge, Delaware County decided to centralize ballot counting at the Wharf, an old Fidelity bank headquarters isolated on the waterfront. It has a large labyrinthine design, with each floor having its own distinct layout, and service elevators, often behind unmarked doors, allowing for discreet movement between floors.
On November 5th, 2020, the Thursday after the election, I observed voting machine warehouse supervisor James Savage insert USB drives into the tabulation servers, and he put in what I counted at least 24. I believe there was more. We objected to him putting them in, but he continued to do so. After he departed, we demanded to see what the results of that was, and what we saw was he flipped the vote another 50,000 votes away from President Trump towards Biden.
A lifelong resident of Delaware County, James Savage was a 29-year member of the United Steelworkers, with 15 years in local union leadership, including 8 as president. Operating at the highest Democratic centers of influence for decades, James Savage is connected to the most powerful members of the party. In 2019, while in Costa Rica contemplating retirement, Jim Savage wrote in a blog post that it was too early to retire and he needed to wield his sword one last time for the cause. And this time, the sword meant being hired as Delaware County's voting machine warehouse supervisor. A known anti-Trump hater, James Savage has a history of public verbal and written attacks, going so far as to ask Santa Claus to lock Trump up for Christmas.
Just like dropped in a fuck Trump.
A former Bernie Sanders delegate in 2016, Savage later pledged allegiance to Hillary Clinton and, like all Democrat operatives, would do anything to prevent Trump's re-election. Here is undercover audio of James Savage advising election officials to just shut down the machines.
Speaking of that, we're going to end up with a number of precincts with no tape, right? So we just told them, nothing we can do. It won't print, it won't print. We've been there, we tried to change it out. Just shut the machine down, right?
What happens when voting machines are shut down? The voting machine tapes are not printed, rendering the precinct unable to compare the results of the V-drive to the results on the printed tapes. Here is election worker Christina Iokono admitting this in a letter. Though he was a loose talker, Savage was much more careful about his official profiles and movements. According to Savage's current LinkedIn profile, he is a legislative representative for the United Steelworkers. But in fact, his employment for the United Steelworkers ended in February 2020. Why would his LinkedIn never mention the end of his United Steelworkers employment? Even more suspicious, why would his LinkedIn profile, which was clearly updated in 2022, never even mention his years working at the voting machine warehouse in Delaware County, a government position he held for 2 years? And how exactly did Jim Savage, a former U.S. Union president, end up in a lower status job as voting machine warehouse supervisor in the third most populous county in Pennsylvania? The election fraud playbook always requires the hiring of cunning, seasoned election operatives, and sometimes as well as strategically placed incompetent workers, and that costs money. In July of 2020, an independent agency audited systems for the elections department in Delaware County to ensure the 2020 election would be run as smoothly as possible. One of the recommendations was to drastically increase hiring and training poll workers in all 428 precincts. But instead of spending on hiring and training poll workers, Delaware County operatives used the audit as an excuse to hire high-salaried, inexperienced consultants to help run the 2020 election, such as Mary Ann Jackson and Christina Perrone, each of whom were paid $100,000 for 5 months of work. Here is disturbing undercover audio of Miss Jackson, hired as interim director of elections.
And she said, I was just talking to my daughter, and they're looking for somebody to step in as an interim director of elections. And I was like, Molly, I don't know anything about elections. Like, all I've really ever done is voted. She goes, just have a conversation with Ashley. Just, I'll tell her. So I talked to her daughter. I thought, oh my God, I have no idea what I've been doing.
And here is Elections Director Christina Perrone, openly admitting to breaking the law in 2020.
So why don't we talk about that offline, because Jim and I had a brief conversation today, and this time it's much different than last time because we're going to have them sign oaths. They're going to need W-4s, and we need them to sign something allowing them to somebody else to pick up. So we're going to actually follow the law fully this time. And so there's a lot more stuff in our letters.
One day I was reading a news article, and I noticed that there was a whistleblower that was discussing Delaware County and the elections. It was a very small article, and I decided to reach out to the author of the article, and I took a chance asking for the whistleblower's information. And I was lucky enough that the whistleblower was agreeable to meet with us. Regina decided to meet with Greg and I privately, and then we became involved with Project Veritas. Project Veritas had provided us with cameras, and we decided to do a sting operation. Greg and I were giving Regina the information, and we were directing her on what to find within the Election Bureau, and specifically we knew that they were going to get rid of the evidence.
A return sheet in Pennsylvania tells you that you received X amount of blank provisional ballots, actual ballots, how many spoiled ballots that you have, you write how many votes that were in person, and then all of the numbers add up. And just like a checkbook, everything has to add up. And out of 428 precincts, over 200 did not fill out the return sheet or properly fill out the return sheet. And they were called back to the voting machine warehouse a week later, and they were given numbers to put on their return sheets. And so many people, they were afraid they were going to be taken away in handcuffs.
This is Tom Gallagher, a lawyer for Delaware County, discussing a clerk dropping off V drives to the whistleblower.
I left a scathing voicemail for Lorraine because she just handed me this box and said, it's missing Chester 1, it's missing.
Why is it missing those V drives?
I have no idea, but there's 1,000 V drives in there. She took V drives, just shoved them into plastic bags, and she went like this. So I said, you get down here and you straighten this out. Well, Jim Allen got a hold of it, and he's just making check marks.
And here is Tom Gallagher, tearing up the tabulator tapes in anticipation of an election audit.
And let them try to figure out what we did.
Mom, why do you have to rip it off? Makes you feel better?
Yeah. It's just so many times, I didn't want anybody to pick it out and take it through stuff away.
Oh.
We're gonna have a little campfire going.
In a letter from the Delaware County Board of Elections, they admit that of the 220 precincts, 79 could not be reconciled. Not only that, they admit to the missing scanner tapes. And who did the Delaware County Board of Elections thank for guidance after all of these systemic failures? None other than Jim Savage. One of James Savage's biggest co-conspirators, another pricey Delaware County election hire, was James Allen, hired as the Director of Elections. Jim Allen previously worked for the squeaky clean Chicago Board of Elections. No stranger to claims of election interference, here he is in an article admitting that the audit numbers in a primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders didn't match between the tabulation and AVC edge voting machines. But he insisted that it was simply a perception issue. But was it just perception? In 2008, a team of scientists from the University of California, Santa Barbara, showed that a single person could hack that same AVC edge voting machine without breaking the security seals. Not only that, the hack could be rigged so that the bad code could easily spread through all of machines of a particular county. Here is undercover video of James Savage and James Allen talking about getting rid of the pads and second scanners from the 2020 election.
The pads and the second scanner. We gotta talk about it. Wow.
For my research, I discovered that Allen worked for Cook County's Board of Elections before coming to Delaware County. So why is this important? Well, if anyone knows Chicago politics, they know it's completely corrupt. And he was here to help destroy the evidence and cover up the fraud.
And here is Tom Gallagher with James Savage and Jim Allen discussing the return sheets fraud.
Okay, go ahead, sheets are fucked up. I know. Okay. Nothing we can do about that. We had maybe 250 records. I think they're straight anywhere in the fucking country.
This is Delaware County Democratic District Attorney Jack Stolzheimer, another major player in the fraud.
The district attorney?
They owed me.
He was... Why did they owe you? Because you're good to them.
Well, you know, before I did this, I did elections.
Why would Pennsylvania District Attorney Jack Stolzheimer owe a man like James Savage any favors? On May 4th, 2022, DA Stolzheimer wrote a letter to the Board of Elections that 2020 election fraud claims, stating, in short, the claim that there is a video depicting Delaware County election officials who appear to be throwing returned ballots into a trash can in anticipation of the election data audit is a complete fiction. But the real fiction is that Stolzheimer never conducted an investigation.
Since June of 2022, I've filed multiple right-to-know public records requests with the district attorney's office, demanding for the criminal investigation that was supposedly done by Jack Stolzheimer. They have not been able to provide a single report to me, to Greg, to our attorneys, to the public. They completely obstructed an investigation into the election fraud into the 2020 election.
In November of 2021, the deep state struck back. James Savage filed a lawsuit against Leah Hoopes Gregory Stenstrom, President Donald Trump, and his closest allies. He claimed that actions they witnessed about the stolen 2020 election were baseless and led to him suffering 2 heart attacks.
He was asking for millions of dollars from us, saying that we were complete liars and that we defamed him and he was scared to leave his house. These were all complete lies. This was nothing but lawfare. Greg and I represented ourselves in court in a Democrat city with a Democrat judge, Michael Erdos. James Savage's attorney, J. Connor Corcoran, is nothing short of a criminal himself. 860 days of grueling, pure hell in which they tried to confiscate our firearms, silence us, and tried to completely intimidate us in a court of law. They were unsuccessful. We won 4 hearings in that court with a Democrat judge in a Democrat city. We used the truth as a complete defense. And unbeknownst to Jim Savage, he had no idea that me, Regina, and Greg were taping him the whole time and catching him in his crimes. We released those videos not shortly after James Savage had filed that case against us. And after 860 days and winning 4 hearings, we were offered a settlement in January of 2024, and we completely declined that offer. We went toe-to-toe with J. Connor Corcoran and Jim Savage, and we won. Since that day, J. Connor Corcoran has completely shut down his law firm and was sanctioned because of us. They used everything from saying that we were domestic terrorists, try to confiscate our firearms, to fining us, to defaming us. We spent hours upon hours having to investigate laws, learning the law, learning court procedures. We had wonderful patriots that were providing us with information to help us with our court filings and to help us with evidence that we could supply to the court system. It was grueling. We noticed that the court system is completely corrupted and has fallen apart. This has taken a toll on our emotional. Sorry. I don't think you guys understand. Like, when I start talking about this stuff, like, it really brings up like a lot of shit. So, sorry, I didn't realize I get emotional. Sorry, just give me a minute.
In spite of heavy professional and personal tolls, their victory is a testament to the indomitable spirit of American patriots. But the same corrupt forces that undermined the 2020 election are gearing up to do it again, and they're not even trying to hide it. Kamala Harris's push for a new Voting Rights Act and all mail-in voting is being twisted to prevent states from enforcing common-sense voter ID laws and cleaning up dirty voter rolls. The elites are pushing to expand mass mail-in ballots and federalize elections, stripping states of their constitutional rights. We've seen this playbook before. Just look at Venezuela, where elections were stolen using the same Dominion machines we currently use. The country descended into chaos this past election, proving that stolen elections can destroy a nation. And now, illegals are being put to work, handed social security numbers, registering for driver's licenses, and quietly added to the voter rolls. Democrats don't need them to show up on election day. Their ballots will be collected at ghost addresses and filled out for them. These are the tools the elites will use to steal the election and entrench their power.
We've seen the consequences of massive election fraud over the last 4 years, and we've seen the consequences to our country. We must demand accountability, transparency, and justice at every level. We cannot, we will not, allow the corruption of our electoral process to stand. It's time to take back our country from those who seek to destroy it. Join us in this fight for America, our freedom, and our children. Together, we will make sure that the beacon of liberty shines bright once again. Stand with us. Fight with us. Victory is within our grasp. We must take it or lose it forever.
And as long as patriots like us continue to stand up and fight, the truth will always prevail.
America first, now and forever.